Spencer Robbins, and we run A Life of Free.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, like, and share it with a friend.
Do it. Do it now.
Do it.
Do it.
Hey guys, it's us.
I wanted to make this video because one of the things that comes up over and over again in the program is that internal critic. You know, it's that voice that says, you're always going to be bad. You know, it may not even be that overt or blatant. It might even just always have you trying to fix yourself, and you'll never be able to receive love until you're fixed or better.
And what we've called that inner critic is the voice of self-hatred, shame, self-judgment, guilt, condemnation. So you guys have heard us talking about this before, but a way to really encompass what that voice is the inner critic. And we all deal with it to some capacity. Typically it's that voice that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter how healthy you are, there's this voice that's telling you this narrative in your head.
So if wherever you're at in this program, if you feel like you are completely shut down, like cannot get in touch with love, like just so shut down from your emotions, if you feel like you'll never be healthy enough, you know, like I feel like that sometimes in your process it sounds like I feel like I've been on this process for years and I'm never getting anywhere, and I just had this moment that I thought I was doing well, and then I sink back into this hole of despair.
This was me today, actually.
Was it really?
Yeah. So I'll actually give you a real life example. So one thing, because I was taken advantage of in multiple ways when I was younger, and how that has followed me in my life has been this narrative in my head that says people always want to take from me, nobody wants to give. And I was processing with a friend and a consultant about it. And I was bringing up a real life situation that I didn't have big pain about. And he was like, do you see how this voice is the same one from the childhood pain that you've talked to me about multiple times? Do you see how similar this voice sounds to the one that you dealt with growing up? And I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing that I feel like people just want to take from me. And what I got to process through after that was like, freaking heck, I've been on this journey for 10 years now, and this feels like the constant theme of my life. It's the constant narrative. It's this thing that I've gone after over and over and over again, and it feels like the biggest pain, and it feels like the thing that I've spent the most time on and have seen the least amount of results in comparison to the other areas that I've tackled. And so what I really got to go after was loving and comforting myself in this area where my inner critic is trying to tell me everyone just wants to take from you, even now that I'm in a position where I have multiple people in my life that are just there to give to me, that are just there to love me. So even though my circumstances have changed, my inner critic hasn't.
So here's the deal, like that inner critic, it comes from years and years in your early childhood that you had no ability to affect, when your parents would only love you if you did something that they saw worthy of acceptance or love. It's the inner critic's going to exist if you experience a ton of neglect, meaning so what they found is what they found in studies in the latest You don't know they? They have been around for centuries. What they found in the most recent psychological studies is that from the ages of 0 to 2 especially, but the ages of 0 to 6, but the ages of 0 to 2, if babies aren't loved and nurtured a ton, then they actually learn to disassociate with love, and it removes their capacity for intimacy. It removes their capacity for healthy emotions. And so if at any point in your childhood there wasn't strong, there wasn't a strong source of love and nurturing and acceptance and taking care of your needs. A lot of parents even shame children at an early age for having needs or having wants or having dreams or desires, and that actually, it really destroys the soul of a child.
And practically too, when have you heard of the cry it out method? So I might get a lot of opposition on this. This is just my personal belief about this. There's a method of parenting and sleep training called the cry it out method. And there's a lot of scientific studies that go into it, saying like when you put your baby to sleep, because they don't know how to process emotion, they might have all these feelings that come up, and it manifests in the form of crying. And so when you put your baby to bed and they're crying, this is actually okay. This is just them kind of letting go of everything throughout the day that they didn't know how to process. And so there's a style of sleep training where the parent will leave the baby in the room by themselves and either not check on them at all and wait till they cry it out, which is the method, cry it out until they just pass out. Or they'll go in at like 15 to 20 minute intervals or shorter and check on them and either just be there, maybe touch them a little bit and then leave. And you do that until your baby falls asleep. Well, the thing that's really damaging about this is the reason why babies are crying is because they do not know how to soothe or comfort themselves. They do not know how to put themselves to sleep. And so they're completely reliant on the comfort and the trust and the safety and the touch of a mom in order to go to sleep. And so if the mom isn't present, and if you're a mom and you're sleep training right now, or you did the cry it out method with your babies, there's no shame on you whatsoever. I have a friend that did the cry it out method with her first two kids, and she's learned a lot since then, and she's doing it completely different now, and she's having to let go of her feelings of shame for herself for not doing it the way she wished she would have. So I want you to not partner with shame as you hear me say this, but what a lot of moms are doing is they're leaving their kids in there crying, but this is the pivotal time for your baby to build trust with you. This is the pivotal time that your baby's brain is developing, that it's learning that it's going to be loved, that it's going to be comforted when it's crying, that it's going to be touched and nurtured and affirmed. It needs that touch to build trust with you, to feel safe and to feel loved. Now, with this method that's been backed up by all of these studies, the cry it out method, it's depriving babies of the very thing that they need the most in their foundational building blocks of their growth. And so even practically, if you didn't go through like a ton of trauma, then even this one thing here can be a cause of childhood trauma.
And when she says trauma, she's saying what most people see as trauma. So like physical, sexual abuse. But Pete Walker, who wrote a lot of literature on CPTSD, and he's actually one of the best sources on complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD that comes from your childhood, comes from the ways that your parents didn't parent you well.
It's not just war, it's not just abuse, it's actually neglect.
And he's gone through a lot of sexual and physical abuse himself, but every time he has a client in front of him that's experienced neglect, he actually feels more compassion for them, because neglect is one of the things that we minimize most in our culture as not being painful and not being trauma. And so we think like, oh, you got hit by your parents, and so my stuff is not as bad. I had like reasonably good parents that loved me well, and they didn't do it perfectly. We like to make excuses for our parents, but the truth is that we can't minimize that pain in the recovery process. If you're wanting to connect with love and have a capacity to receive and give love well, and have a capacity for deep intimacy in relationships, that recovery process requires that you don't minimize what has happened in your childhood.
And what he's not saying is to villainize or vilify your parents. So this doesn't look like, well, my mom didn't do this, so she's the problem and she's the one.
She's the enemy. She's awful.
It doesn't look like that. You might have to feel some of those feelings if they come up from you, or from inside of you. But what we're saying is pay attention to the things that you didn't get. It's not pointing the finger and it's blaming, but it's becoming aware of what's going on inside of you, what you didn't get, things that you need, because then from there you have really good information to learn how to reparent yourself or to learn what needs you actually have.
So with the inner critic too, when that happens at an early age and you start building that, what happens is, let's say a mom or a dad would say every time you did something bad, they'd be like, how dare you, go to your room. And there'd be this shaming, this shaming rhetoric that would come out of their mouths with you. what you'll find is like subconsciously those children will grow up and start repeating those same things to themselves. How dare you? I can't believe you did that. If you ever have an internal dialogue where when you mess up or you do something, you're like, I can't believe I just did that. How could I have just done that? And you start really beating yourself up. The odds are, what happened is you're actually repeating the way that you were parented as a child. And you're actually taking experiences from what you experienced as a child and you're repeating that over and over again subconsciously. That inner critic was built up because the language of love that you heard was really distorted by the sources that were meant to give you love the most. So why are we sharing all of this? Well, first of all, parents can't be perfect. They can't be. But there's good enough parenting that's necessary. What they found in a lot of studies is that when parents actually show a lot of love and nurturing and are there and are present and aren't shaming children for having needs and wants and dreams and are encouraging their dreams, encouraging their desires, those children have an intense capacity for love, to receive love and to give love away. It's a real level of health. And what I've experienced in my childhood is not that. I feel like when I look back, a lot was stolen from me. But the other thing that we've been learning too in our process is that people that have gone through trauma and have CPTSD or have experienced a lot of pain in their childhood, that have an inner critic, those that are willing to work past it and actually build a healthy relationship with love and intimacy with people and learn to trust people and break down that inner critic, they actually have the capacity for a lot more wisdom and understanding of emotional intelligence than anybody else.
We actually have a higher capacity for love and awareness when it comes down to it, because we've had to learn and process through so many different things that our value for it actually increases. So it actually gets to be a gift to you. And the thing with that voice of the inner critic that's so deceiving is it tries to convince you that if you listen to this voice that it'll make you better. Like if I listen to the voice that tells me no one wants to give to me and everyone wants to take from me, there's something internally where I believe that if I protect myself enough, it will make my life less painful. It will make my relationships less painful. And I wish that were true. It actually only isolates me and it only makes me want to hold on to what I have and not give. But the truth is if I can reparent myself in these areas where I felt like I was only taken from, if I can be a protector for me, and God is involved in all of this too, but there's something about learning how to be practically reparented that if we learn how to give it to ourselves, it's actually easier to get it from God. But in this, if I can reparent myself in these areas where I feel like I have to cling to what I have because I'm afraid of being taken from, then if I can love myself there, then I'll actually feel free to give. And what happens when you give? People are actually inspired to give back. And so it actually ends up breaking that line, breaking that cycle, but I have to reparent myself in order to get through that voice that's telling me to hold on to everything and protect myself.
And we're going to get into some different things to really destroy inner critic. But just to hit on what Sam was saying, there's that thought that comes in Christianity. We're like, well, I think God should be the only one that's loving me, that's teaching me how to be saved and healthy internally. It's like, I shouldn't have to love myself. It shouldn't be, we create all these weird religious things that we think it has to be a certain way. We get into fear mode where we're like, well, it has to come from God. If I do it, then it's not real and it's fake and it's just mustered up from inside of me. It's like, no, the point is that God is love. Every good thing comes from God. And just to let you know, if you struggle hearing God's voice, you're like, I've never heard from God. I don't hear him. Why did you sign up for this program? Why do you think you desire health? Why do you think you have a craving for love? Don't you think it might be that the Father showed you, like even the disciples when they looked at Jesus, he said, who do you say that I am? And then Peter said, you're the Christ. And he said, I haven't shown you. Nobody else has shown you except my Father in heaven. Like he didn't even know that the Father was talking the whole time about who Jesus was to him. Like you may not even know that God's been really present and vocal in your life, but we've expected it to be a certain way. But all that being said, it's all about love. Love comes from different sources. It comes from you, it comes from people around you, and it comes from God. And frankly, your parents were meant to be the strongest source of love that built the foundation of how to interpret what love actually is in your early childhood. When they mess up, which they did mess up because they're all imperfect, but when they messed up, they actually did you a huge disservice. And so we actually have to pick up the pieces because it's still our life.
And the thing is too, is God created love. He is the entire being and entity of love. So if I get love from Spencer, or if I get love from a friend or a spiritual parent or a counselor or whatever, God's the origin. He's the original source of that in the first place. And so sometimes what we do is like, well, I feel disconnected from God, and so I'm going to find all my affections here. But if I actually recognize He's just a face of God, He is one expression of who God is. The love that's coming from Him, the original source of it, is from the Father. And so if I can open and tenderize my heart to being willing to receive love from anything and everything around me, I actually feel more connected to God because He's the one that came from in the first place. It's just Him loving you through someone or something else.
And so here's the thing. I want you to take responsibility over your parents off the table, because if they were sitting in front of us and we were talking to them, we would be loving on them. We'd be walking them through their own shame, their own internal dialogues, and their own pain. That's not the point. This is about you. And so it has to be a messy process. It's not your responsibility to ever take care of your parents. It should never, ever, ever have to be your responsibility to take care of them, to defend them, to make sure that they don't feel vilified. It's like there has to be a messy process where your emotions come up and you don't feel shame about them.
Yeah.
And so all that being said,
and that'll actually make your relationship with your parents healthier, because what happens when you don't go through this process is bitterness and resentment and pain end up building up. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I want you guys to write down, I want you right now, actually get out a journal. And if you need to pause this for a second, go ahead, but take out a journal. I want you to write down, if you're feeling inner critic stuff right now, you're going like, you should be so much further in this process. I can't believe you messed up just again. I can't believe it's the same thing that keeps happening to you. Whatever statements you normally say over yourself, I want you to actually think about that. What have been the most common things that I've said over myself to try and fix myself faster, or to try and just discourage myself from the pain of working through this? What's been your internal dialogue that you've said over yourself? And then once you've written all those down, and you can pause it too if you need to, but write all those down. Once you've written those down, I want you to actually see, I want you to get present and ask your heart, does that feel like a mom statement that she said over me in the past in my childhood? Or does that sound like a dad statement that he said over me in my childhood? Does that sound like something that he's really spoken over me over and over and over again?
Maybe it's not even words that they've spoken over you, but maybe it's ways that they responded to you in action. Maybe they withdrew from you. Maybe it's all of the things that weren't ever spoken that taught you different things. That might be your go-to to fix your problems or to fix your pain, is looking at, how does dad react whenever I fail or mess up?
Maybe you're you watch TV or you watch the other kids and their parents would love on them. And you're like, maybe I just have to be good enough. Maybe I have to do something really great for them to get their attention and their acceptance. And so maybe just in their actions, they taught you that you have to do something great. So there's this thing in you that you keep telling yourself, come on, be better, be better, be better. I want you to write those things down. And then I want you to close your eyes and actually see that parent saying it to 4-year-old you or 2-year-old you, little baby you. Actually younger you, actually visualize your parents in moments. You can remember moments when they actually spoke to you that way. I want you to see those adults and those parents saying that to little you and having those behaviors with little you. I actually want you to see it, because here's the thing. One of the most common practices in recovery for this type of inner critic pain and this type of toxic shame that people deal with is every single person in existence, we have this innate humanity, this human condition to see children and naturally feel that they deserve love. We have this, it's in humanity to believe that children don't have to do anything to deserve love. They just deserve it. Little babies, when you think of a little baby, you know that it just deserves love. There's nothing that it can do to receive it. It's in humanity to believe that about little babies. And when you actually see yourself that way, it gives you a capacity to feel compassion for yourself. And when you actually see the moment when those things were being spoken over little you get to actually step in. One of the things that I've been doing recently in my journals is going Spencer, if mom ever says that to you again, I'm going to make sure to tell her off. I'm going to tell her exactly how valuable you are. I'm going to tell her that you don't have to do shit to be loved and accepted by me. And I'll step up for him in those moments. I'll be like, if dad ever says that to you again, this is what I'm going to tell him. This is what I'm going to do to him. it's just like it's actually standing up. And it's not about making mom and dad the enemy, but in that moment, it's making sure that little kid in you feels so protected and covered and soothed and feels your compassion and protection for them.
And I'll share a story too. I was just on the phone with one of my best friends, and I mentored her for about a year through the peak of her trauma. And I think it came out with me because she felt safest with me. And so I got to see all of the messiest versions of her, and I got to walk with her and love her through it, and it's been beautiful. And now she's in this part of her journey where she's realizing that with her husband, like her mom, she feels like she never gets to have a voice and she never gets to stand up for what she wants. So because of the trauma she went through when she was little, it was all about her mom. Everything all the time was all about mom. And she felt so powerless that she just decided the easiest way to stay safe and to protect myself is to stay silent and just go with it. So now she's married, she's living in Canada, she doesn't want to be in this country, she hates it, she feels trapped, she wants to be by her friends and family, and she's never given herself a voice over it. She's just gone with everything that her husband says that he wants. And she's on the phone with me today, and she goes, I told him, like he was saying, well, maybe we can just stay here for a couple more months, and she's like, F no, like, I want to go now. And she's like, I don't know what happened, but it was the first time I ever actually gave myself a voice. And we had the healthiest conversation after that we have ever had. And we were both blown away because I wasn't reactive at him. He wasn't reactive at me. We just got to understand. And she was like, I was able to realize with him that I've shut my voice down for so long, and I just feel like I have to go with what he wants. And he was able to see how that's played out in our entire marriage. And so my response to that is like, isn't it crazy? The second that you actually gave yourself a voice, you felt powerful and you felt connected to yourself. And she's like, what's crazy is since I've been with him, I haven't felt connected to God at all. And so what I was able to start seeing is, like her mom, with her husband, who's typically we do this with the person who's closest to us. So it originated with her mom, and then she projected her mom pain onto her husband. So when she got married, she decided that she was powerless and she couldn't have a voice, just like she did with her mom her entire life. Now she's in this place where she finally gave herself a voice. And whenever you don't give yourself a voice, you're deciding that you're not important, and so you're disconnecting from yourself. And when you disconnect from yourself, you're disconnecting from God. But when she gave herself a voice, she felt connected to herself, she's feeling connected to her husband, and she's feeling more connected to God. She feels powerful, so she's actually able to bring herself to the table. And so these trends and themes, they ripple into every single area of our lives. But it was her deciding, that inner critic, that I have to stay silent and that I'm powerless. It was her deciding that inner critic was a lie that's actually gave her connection to her husband, herself, and to God.
It's amazing. And so here's the thing. If this process, if the emotional health process, if you getting healthy, all of this stuff, the entire journey, come alive, like everything with alive and free, if it is overwhelming at all, make it your only aim to demolish and destroy that inner critic voice. Because that is the number one culprit that needs to get out of the way first before you have a capacity to love, receive love, and have intimate relationships, because that inner critic will steal all of that from you.
Yeah.
The inner critic says you're not worth it. The inner critic says that you have to fix something before you deserve it. The inner critic is the culprit, so make that your main focus and don't muddy up the water.
And if you can go after that and then do what Spence said a minute ago, picture yourself as 6-month-old to 2-year-old you, and connect with them. Connect with how that baby felt when mom and dad were treating you like that or saying those things to you. Even if you don't remember anything that happened when you were that young, that's okay. Think about your relationship with them and the theme of that. If you can connect with compassion for little you, it's the gateway to love. Compassion is the door to receiving love. And if you can receive love, and if you can make you receiving love your mission in life, you will step into the fullness of who God's called you to be. But it's silencing that inner critic, connecting with you so you can connect with compassion, and that's how you can connect with love.
And to finish up, to ask the Father, Father, and you can even make statements about his nature. Father, you're so good. Father, you gave your life for me. You actually gave your life because you saw me as valuable. Father, how would you love that little girl right now? Father, how are you loving that little girl? Father, what would you do in that situation that she's being told that? Father, what do you think about her? Father, what are your feelings about her? Father, what's my worth? What's her worth? Partner with him in loving that little girl. When you keep thinking about older you, you're going to keep jumping back to that voice that you feel like has protected you and turned you into, it's caused you to have the ability to be you and protect yourself from abandonment and rejection and the pain of not being loved. Partner with love in this. This whole thing is about love. It's all about being encompassed by love.
And all you're doing is switching from that inner critic being your protection to you being your protector, and to being able to receive God being your protector. That's literally, in the simplicity of it, that's all that's happening, because that voice is the only thing that you had to protect yourself growing up. That's all that you had. So now all your heart actually needs is for you to be that voice, for you to stand up for that little kid that didn't get what she needed.
And let us know your thoughts on this one. We'd love to hear how this goes.
We love you guys.
Love you guys.
Thanks for watching our video. If you liked this video, then you are really gonna like our workshop.
Our workshop is an awesome dive into getting extremely connected to yourself, what's keeping you from being connected to yourself. Maybe you've been shut down or running away from emotions and relationships, all the good stuff. We give you the best stuff that we've given away to our clients in that training. And if you've already seen the training, watch the whole thing and book a call with our team at the end.